Before we crack open tonight's cursed can of content, I just want to say a big thank you to all our subscribers, and an extra sinister shout out to the loyal members of the Sinister Elite. You legends help keep the darkness alive. If you're enjoying the stories and want to take it a step further, hit that like button, make sure you're subscribed, and consider joining the Sinister Elite by clicking that join button below. Members get access to creepy custom emojis and exclusive Sinister Elite badges that level up the longer you survive with us. It's like loyalty, but spookier. All right, lights off, headphones in, and let's summon something we'll all regret. They don't tell you when you apply to gold tooth pawn and loan that the tooth is literal. It's embedded in the counter glass next to a bowl of 1990s Pogs and a cracked crystal ashtray. The molar's got a gold cap with a smile line engraved in it, like it's winking. I showed up 10 minutes late smelling like a pine tree rolled in skunk perfume, and the tooth winked at me. I decided to not tell anyone that a tooth winked at me because I like having a job, and also because I just ripped an after-work before-work joint and maybe my neurons were doing parkour. Right inside the door is the sign in Sharpie on cardboard. We buy guns, guitars, ghosts, no returns on ghosts. Behind the counter, right where normal shops keep their schedule and coupons, we have 3 rules taped up. They look like they were typed on a typewriter that survived a house fire. Never handle the war relics after dark. They remember blood. If a mirror fogs from the inside, cover it and don't look again. If a customer offers to sell back an item we've never seen, lock the door. My boss Vic is the kind of guy who keeps a switchblade in a suede pouch and calls everybody chief. He wasn't in yet. That's how I knew it was still technically daylight, even though the sky outside had the color of cold dishwater and the neon. "We're open" sign buzzed like it had a trapped wasp. I did the usual. Flipped on the case lights, clicked the little cat statue that waves forever, and apologized to the doll wall. Sounds dumb. Trust me, it helps. You don't gotta believe in ghosts to know it's polite to nod at them. In the glass case under the wink tooth, the war shelf waited. A Civil War bayonet, a trench lighter shaped like a skull, a rusted compass with a sun that always pointed west, and 3 shell casings that sometimes rolled on their own. Sometimes. Like cats. Let them have their private life. There's also the mirror aisle. Every pawn shop has one. Ours is worse. It starts with normal thrift store vibes. Oval vanity mirrors, gilded frames, some cracked. But halfway down they get deeper. Like the glass thickens like honey. Stare too long and you see the room behind you looking a couple inches misaligned from the way you know it is. Last week I caught my reflection blinking out of sync. I told myself it was just the joint. Then I stopped wearing hats because the me in the mirror kept wearing a different one. I'm restocking a basket of tangled phone chargers when the bell above the door dings. The air shifts. Pawn shop doors let in regulars, bargain hunters, weirdos, and sometimes the kind of cold that smells like dirt after rain and pennies. The guy who comes in is dressed like a reenactment buff, but wrong. Like his coat isn't a costume. It's the original, seams mended with horsehair thread. He doesn't walk so much as arrive at the counter, and when he smiles, there's that battlefield dentistry gap. One of his teeth gone, as if traded to the glass molar under my elbow. He sets down a canvas roll and taps it once. "I'd like to sell back," he says. My eyebrows do a backflip. Rule 3 taps the back of my skull like a cop's flashlight. If a customer offers to sell back an item we've never seen, lock the door. I do not lock the door. "What is it?" I ask, stalling, because sometimes the rules are metaphors and sometimes they're laws and sometimes you're high and you can't tell the difference. He unrolls it carefully, reverent as a priest with a relic. Bayonet. Long, triangular, mean. I've seen ours 100 times. This one looks like its shadow weighs more than it does. Along the blade, brown freckles that aren't rust. He puts it on the glass. The molar underneath the counter goes from wink to grimace. "Sir," I say, keeping my voice low like the bayonet is a rattlesnake that can hear. We already have one of those." He doesn't look at the other bayonet. He looks at the mirrors. Every single one of them. In that moment, I swear all the reflections exhale, fogging for a heartbeat, from the inside. Rule 2 lifts like a trapdoor in my stomach. "Sell back," he repeats, soft, as if repeating a password to a door only he can see. "Can I ask," I venture, "where you got it?" "Found it in a chest that was sold here," he says. "Didn't want it. It wanted me." There's a quiet you can only hear in places with too many stories crammed into one room. Pawn shops have that quiet. Libraries have it too. But in here, the quiet has teeth. I hear the faintest plink of a shell casing rolling in the case below. "Okay," I say, and reach for the bayonet out of reflex. The bad reflex. My hand stops a quarter-inch from the metal. The glass fogs again, but just in one mirror, a tall one with an oak frame and a hairline crack like a smile. I can see myself in it, but not me. The other me is standing up straighter, serious, sober. He's wearing my shirt, but it's buttoned right. He shakes his head. "No." I pull my hand back. "Not after dark," I murmur. "It isn't dark," the man says, but when I glance at the front windows, the dishwater sky has curdled. The neon sign flickers O-P-E-N into O-P-E-N into O-P-N. The cat statue waves slower, like the air's gotten thick. The molar clicks against the glass. "Look," I say. "Our policy is, complicated." I keep the bayonet on the glass between us like we're both allergic. "If this was sold here once, we can, hold it for you. But we can't sell back until morning." I don't know if that's a policy. It feels like one. It feels safe. He nods like he knew I'd say that. Then he does the thing that ruins my night. He lifts his hand and taps the blade. Tap, just once, like he's checking if it's real. A bead forms along the tip. Red. Dew forming on a leaf. Another bead follows. Then a thin line, as if the metal remembers how to be a wound. I swallow hard. "Sir, I'm gonna have to ask you not to..." He's already backing away. He doesn't take the money. He doesn't take the bayonet. He smiles around the missing tooth like he left something in the room on purpose. Then the bell dings and he's gone and the door shuts, and the temperature in Gold Tooth Pond drops 5 degrees, like an elevator forgetting a floor. I grab the roll intending to burrito the blade, when the oak mirror across from me fogs again from the inside, crawling, slow. Something presses from behind the glass, a shape of a face but too long, cheekbones like spearheads, eyes too far apart. I slap the nearest sheet over it and don't think. I staple the corners like I'm patching drywall. The staple gun jams on the last one and the mirror gives a tiny, disappointed sigh. When I look down, the bayonet's bleeding proper now. Thin line across the tip, dots along the fuller. Not gallons, just enough to wet the idea of a blade. The droplets patter against the glass case and each pat is a decade. 1864, 1865, 1866. Tap, tap, tap. The shell casings roll until they brace against each other and stop like soldiers at attention. I flip the "We're open" sign to back in 5 and lock the door. Belated, I know. Rule 3's not going to give me a gold star. I carry the wrapped bayonet to the back, to the safe, past the aisles of lamps that never stay pointed in the same direction, and the stack of radios that sometimes hum on their own. The safe is old. Combination, not digital. I kneel, dial with fingers that don't feel attached, and think about how everyone says pawnshops are where stories come to rest. Not here. Here, stories bring their weapons on consignment. The safe door opens with a cough. Inside are ledgers and a little shoebox labeled "Do Not." I put the bayonet on top, close the door, and spin the wheel until the numbers feel scrambled. When I stand up, I catch my breath in the dusty metal of a filing cabinet, my reflection stretched and pale and whispering one word I can't hear. I lean closer, and in the fuzz of my own breath on the steel, the word writes itself, Remember. I take 1 step back, 2 steps forward, because my feet don't know which way the shop is anymore. Then the molar on the counter clinks again, impatient, like a bell. The phone rings. Gold tooth pawn, I say because I'm a professional. A woman's voice, static chewed. You covered the mirror. Good. Now don't uncover any of them until sunrise. How do you? Rule 4, she says. You didn't know there was a Rule 4 yet. The line goes dead. Every mirror in the aisle breathes in. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of ghosts, because of the mirrors. They stayed under their sheets, but I could hear them breathe. Like the sound of wind pressing through old glass. Every time I blinked, I saw that face behind the fog again. Long, pale, wrong. I showed up for my shift anyway. I told myself it was just the weed. Maybe I'd gotten some trippy strain that came preloaded with a Civil War nightmare and a ghost hotline. Vic was already there when I walked in, sitting behind the counter with a cup of black coffee and the patience of someone who doesn't get paid enough to believe in the supernatural. Rough night? He asked. You could say that, I muttered, setting my backpack down. You ever add a new rule without telling me? He froze mid-sip. Why? Because someone called last night. Told me about a Rule 4. He lowered his coffee slowly, eyes narrowing. Who? I shrugged. Didn't say. Just, don't uncover any mirrors till sunrise. Vic didn't move for a full 10 seconds. Then he got up, grabbed a keyring from his belt, and started checking every sheet-covered mirror in the aisle. Don't touch those, he muttered. Not tonight. Not tonight? I asked. So, there is a Rule 4? He looked at me over his shoulder. There's always been a Rule 4. I just hoped you'd never need to know it. The rest of the day dragged. Customers came and went. Pawned guitars, traded fishing rods, tried to haggle over a toaster. Everything felt normal, and that was somehow worse. Around 5, Vic left early to pick up his kid. Close up at 8, he said. And for the love of God, John, don't mess with the war shelf. I gave him a thumbs up I didn't mean. Sure thing, Chief. By the time the sun set, the neon sign outside had started flickering again. The O blinked off, leaving PEN glowing like a threat. I decided to check the safe. The bayonet was still inside, wrapped tight, but the rag was darker now, damp in spots. It smelled like iron and old rain. The second I touched the safe door, the phone rang again. I froze. Gold tooth pawn, I said, voice shaking. Don't let them out, the same woman said. Not tonight. Who are you? You'll see soon enough, she whispered. Just don't break Rule 4. The line clicked dead. Then came the sound I'll never forget. A soft thud from the mirror aisle. One of the sheets had fallen. I grabbed the nearest thing I could use as a weapon, a golf club with a cracked shaft, and walked down the aisle. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered in slow pulses, like a heartbeat trying to stop. The fallen sheet lay crumpled near the end, and the mirror it had covered was still fogging from the inside. Rule 4, John, I whispered. Don't uncover any mirrors. But I'd already uncovered it. The reflection was off. I was in the frame, but not like normal. Everything was reversed. My tattoo was on the wrong arm, my shirt logo backward. But the biggest difference was the face. My reflection was smiling, and I wasn't. Then the reflection moved, half a second too late, like it had to think about it. It tilted its head. I didn't. That was when the lights in the store went out. I dropped the club and ran for the breaker room in the back. As I did, I heard glass shift, mirrors rattling on their hooks, whispering as they fogged over. Remember, a voice hissed behind me. I spun around. Nothing. Just rows of dusty radios and the faint hum of the beer cooler. When I got to the breaker, every switch was on. So what the hell killed the lights? Something moved in the reflection of a steel shelf beside me, a shape slipping by fast, too pale to be human. I turned, heart pounding. The aisle behind me was empty, but the reflections on the metal surfaces showed something else. A crowd. Dozens of pale faces all staring in my direction. I took one step back, tripped over something, and hit the floor. It wasn't a box. It was cloth. Another fallen mirror sheet. The mirror it had covered stood tall in front of me, and for a second, it looked like I was staring down into a different shop. Same layout, same shelves. But behind the counter stood my reflection, and behind him the mirrors were all open. He smiled again, and the lights came back on. I scrambled up, covered it, and stapled it shut. My hands shook so bad I nearly stapled my thumb. When I turned around, every other mirror in the aisle had fogged over. Not from the inside this time, from both sides. The phone rang again. "Gold-tooth pawn," I breathed. "Good," said the woman. "You covered it in time." "What's happening?" I asked. "What are those things?" "They're not ghosts," she said softly. "They're reflections that remember what we're supposed to forget." Then she hung up again. Behind me, one of the mirrors gave a soft, muffled knock. Once. Twice. Then a third time. Longer, slower. Like it was waiting for me to knock back. I sat on the counter, chain-smoked 2 cigarettes, and watched the clock until sunrise. When the first light hit the windows, every mirror in the aisle exhaled at once. The fog vanished. The air felt normal again. But when I went to open the shop, there was a smear on the inside of the front door. Not a handprint. A face print. And drawn into the condensation were words I wish I hadn't read. Rule 5. They only need a reflection. By the time I got back to work the next evening, I'd decided 2 things. I was never smoking before a shift again. I was definitely, absolutely, 100% smoking after this one. Gold-tooth pawn and loan looked the same on the outside. Buzzing sign, cloudy windows, a cat statue waving its eternal wave. But when I unlocked the door, something felt different. The air inside was heavy, like someone had filled the place with wet wool and secrets. The bayonet was still locked up in the safe. The mirrors were still covered. But on the counter, taped next to the 3 rules, and my newly scribbled Rule 4, was another piece of paper I hadn't seen before. Same typewriter font, same burnt edges. Rule 5. Never accept anything that casts no shadow. The words made the back of my neck tingle. I looked around for Vic, but the shop was empty. His truck wasn't out front either. The coffee pot was cold. It wasn't like him to leave without saying anything. I'd been there maybe 20 minutes when the bell above the door chimed. A man stepped in. Mid-40s, slick hair, expensive trench coat that didn't match the place. He carried a briefcase like it contained the 10 Commandments. "Evening," I said. "We're open, but it's mostly junk today." He smiled thinly. "That's the beauty of pawn shops. One man's junk is another man's soul." I laughed nervously. "We're out of souls, but I can offer store credit." He didn't laugh back. The guy set his briefcase on the counter and popped it open with a soft click. Inside was nothing but a small velvet bag. He drew it out, unrolled it, and something spilled onto the counter with a soft thump. It wasn't a coin. It wasn't jewelry. It looked like a shadow, not a trick of the light. An actual physical patch of darkness. It didn't match the lighting in the room, didn't connect to him or anything else. Just sat there, flat and shifting, like oil in reverse. "I'd like to pawn this," he said. I blinked. "What is that?" He smiled again, wider this time. His teeth were too straight. "An unwanted attachment." I looked behind him. The neon open sign glowed red against the glass, casting light on the wall beside him. But there was something missing. Him. He had no shadow. My stomach dropped. Rule 5 was practically screaming in my head. Never accept anything that casts no shadow. "Sorry, man," I said quickly, pushing the bag back toward him. "We don't take, non-material donations." He didn't move. "You don't understand. It's been following me, whispering when I sleep. It remembers places I've never been." The thing on the counter twitched, just barely, but enough to make the gold tooth in the display below rattle against the glass. "I really can't," I started, but he cut me off. "Please," he hissed. "If I leave it here, it won't find me again." "I'll pay you to keep it." The room temperature dropped. The cat statue's paw stopped mid-wave. "Sir, you should leave," I said, stepping back. He looked over his shoulder toward the mirror aisle. The sheets fluttered faintly as if someone had brushed by them. "Too late," he whispered. The lights flickered. The open sign outside buzzed and blinked into a single word. P-E-N. The shadow on the counter lifted. Not physically, like smoke caught in gravity, rising, forming a vague outline of something that had forgotten how to be human. Its head tilted the wrong way. "Sir," I said, backing up, "you need to leave now." The man shook his head, whispering to himself. "It won't let me." Then the shadow latched onto him. Not a jump, not a movement, just a shift. 1 second it was separate, the next it was wrapped around him, crawling over his shoulders and face like spilled ink. He screamed, but it was muffled, like the sound came from the bottom of a well. I grabbed the first thing I saw, a lamp from the shelf behind me, and smashed it onto the counter. The bulb popped. Light flared, bright and wrong, and the shadow recoiled for just a second before snapping back into him. Then both of them were gone. No man. No shadow. Just the faint smell of ozone and something like burnt matches. I stood there, heart hammering, when the phone rang again. "Gold tooth pawn," I said automatically. "Good," said the woman's voice. "You didn't take it." "Who are you?" I snapped. "You keep calling, giving me rules, and you never explain. What the hell is going on in this place?" A pause. Then, "I used to work there, John. Before Victoria, before the mirrors. What happened to you?" She hesitated. "I stayed past sunrise." The line went dead. I poured myself a shot of the cheap bourbon we keep for liquid courage transactions and sat behind the counter. The gold tooth under the glass looked duller now. Less gold, more bone. The safe in the back room clicked open on its own. I froze. When I peeked inside, the bayonet was gone. But something else was there in its place. A slip of paper, same burned edges, same typewriter font. Rule 6. If an item disappears, something alive must take its place. Behind me, I heard the soft creak of the front door opening. The neon sign had gone out completely, and in the faint reflection of the front window, I saw someone standing behind me. Someone wearing my uniform, my face, my name tag, except he had no shadow. I used to joke that Gold Tooth Pawn and Loan could survive the apocalypse. Tornado? Fine. Flood? We'd float. IRS audit? Vic's been through worse. But nobody told me about the kind of apocalypse that walks in wearing your face. When I saw my double standing behind me in the reflection, same flannel, same bad posture, same everything but a missing shadow, my brain just glitched. I spun around with my heart beating so hard I could taste metal. No one there. The bell above the door didn't ring, but the reflection in the window stayed put. He smiled, I smiled, and then he lifted a hand and tapped the glass from the inside. 3 slow knocks, the same rhythm from the mirrors. I did what any rational adult does when confronted with paranormal nonsense. I ran into the back room, locked the door, and had a full-blown conversation with myself about how much I was losing it. Then I heard the front bell ding again. Footsteps. Someone was in the store. "Vic?" I called out. No answer. The footsteps were uneven, like whoever it was limped, or maybe was dragging something. The air smelled wrong. Ozone again. Burnt copper, like lightning and pennies and something crawling out of the earth. I peeked through the crack in the door. It was the same guy from last night, the reenactor. The one who'd brought in the bayonet. Only something was off. His skin was gray around the edges, like the color had drained out. His eyes were too wide, and there was a faint red line across his chest, like a uniform wound that hadn't quite healed. He was holding the same canvas roll. "I told you not to come back," I whispered. He looked right at me, though there's no way he could have seen me. "You never finished the transaction," he said softly. Then he rolled out the bayonet again, except it wasn't bleeding this time. It was dripping black. Tar. Oil. Something thicker than either. "Sir," I said, stepping out slowly, hands up like I was talking to a wild animal. "You need to leave the item here and—" He shook his head. "No, it's yours now." "I don't want it." He smiled, and his teeth looked smaller than they should have been. Too many gums. "That's what the last clerk said." He placed the bayonet on the glass. The gold tooth beneath it cracked. A sound like whispering metal filled the air. I could hear the other items vibrating. The compasses, the shell casings, the skull lighter. Then the trench lighter flicked on by itself. The flame was blue. That's when I realized. There was no reflection of the flame in the mirrors. I turned toward the mirror aisle, and the sheets started to move, like something was crawling underneath them. Dozens of little shapes pressing outward. Hands, faces, maybe worse. The reenactor backed away, grinning. "You opened the safe, didn't you?" "I didn't." "You did," he said. "You broke the seal. Now they'll trade." He started walking backward toward the door, and for a second I thought he was leaving. I thought I was free. Then the door swung open before he reached it, and the man who walked in was him. Exact same face, same coat, same missing tooth. The first version of him looked over at the second one. Neither spoke. They just stared, smiling, until the one who'd come in last flickered. Literally, like a bad TV signal. And the lights in the store buzzed out again. When they came back on, both were gone. The bayonet still sat on the counter, wrapped in that canvas. But beside it, in neat typewriter font, was another new rule burned into a fresh scrap of paper. Rule 7. If a customer returns more than once, only one leaves. The phone rang. I picked up, already shaking. "What does it mean?" I asked. "Why are there rules for this stuff?" The woman on the other end sighed. "Because the pawn shop isn't a building, John. It's a door. A door to what?" "To wherever these things come from," she said. "They were supposed to stay closed. The relics are anchors. The mirrors, windows. The rules keep the line between us thin enough to trade, thick enough to survive. Then what happens when we break them?" "You already know," she whispered. "You just haven't remembered it yet." I looked up. My reflection in the darkened window had started smiling again. But this time, its lips didn't stop at the corners of the mouth. They kept going, curling up toward the eyes, stretching too far, revealing rows of teeth that didn't belong to either of us. I dropped the phone, and from the back room, I heard the safe slam shut on its own. When I opened it a minute later, the bayonet was gone again. In its place, my name tag. And below it, written in dust on the steel floor, "John stayed past sunrise." I didn't plan to go back for a fifth night. Any sane person would have torched the building and let the ghost pawn me for parts. But the thing about Gold Tooth Pawn and Loan is, it doesn't like being ignored. I woke up to find my work shirt hanging on my front door. Still warm, still smelling like the shop's old wood and ozone. Inside the breast pocket was a note, typed on that same scorched paper. "Final shift. Close the door." When I drove up, the parking lot was empty except for Vic's old Chevy. The windows were fogged from the inside. His driver's door was open, keys still in the ignition. "Vic?" I called. Nothing. The bell over the door jingled when I stepped in, and the sound died halfway through like it hit a wall of wet cotton. The lights inside were already on, but they weren't fluorescent anymore. Dim, gold, flickering like lantern light. Every object cast two shadows that didn't match. The mirrors were still covered, but the sheets pulsed faintly, like they were breathing in time with my heartbeat. On the counter sat a single item, the bayonet, wrapped, waiting. "John." The voice came from behind me. Vic stood at the end of the aisle, pale and sunken, but smiling, like nothing was wrong. "Told you you'd make it to closing." "Where the hell have you been?" I asked. "Do you know what's happening here?" He stepped into the light. Half of his face didn't follow. The other half glimmered in the reflection of a nearby mirror, moving slightly out of sync with him. "I told you," he said quietly. "The rules keep things even. You break them, something takes your place." "What are you talking about?" He nodded toward the bayonet. "That's your trade." "Nope," I said immediately. "No trades. No sales. I'm clocking out." I turned for the door, but it was gone. Not locked. Gone. Just a solid wall of pawn shelves stretching forever, packed with antiques I'd never seen before. Behind me, Vic sighed. "You can't leave until it's balanced again." Then the phone rang. I ran for it, snatching the receiver like it was oxygen. "Hello?" "It's time," the woman's voice said. "The shop's collected too much. You need to close the door." "How?" "You'll know when you see it." "Wait, who are you really?" There was a pause and then, "You've spoken to me before, John. Every night when you lock up, you just forget." The line went dead. The gold tooth under the glass started to vibrate. The bayonet twitched like something alive was breathing underneath the cloth. I stepped back, but the air around me rippled, literally, like heat waves on asphalt. The mirrors all at once exhaled fog, and every sheet tore off in a single sound that was half scream, half sigh. Each reflection showed a different version of the shop. Burnt, flooded, filled with bones, overgrown with vines, empty, but lit by thousands of candles. In one, I saw myself cleaning blood off the counter. In another, I saw myself hanging from the ceiling. "Balance," Vic muttered. "One of us has to stay." The mirrors began to hum, vibrating in harmony, until the sound became a low chant that rattled the glass cases. The bayonet rolled itself off the counter and clattered point down into the floorboards. The second it struck wood, the air went cold. Vic's reflection stepped out of the mirror beside him, and the two of them merged. He let out a wet gasp and turned toward me. Half his face was now reflective, eyes glowing like candlelight through mercury. "It remembers you," he said. "You broke the chain. It wants to close the door with something alive." I stumbled backward, grabbed the cat statue, and hurled it at the bayonet. The impact sent a shockwave through the shop. The mirrors screamed, every light burst, and for half a second everything went black. When the glow returned, the bayonet was gone. So was Vic. But there was something else on the counter now. A key. Brass, old, warm to the touch. The word "close" carved into it. The walls around me pulsed again, slower now, like the heartbeat of something falling asleep. I turned in a slow circle, and that's when I saw it. What she meant by the door. The back wall behind the safe had split down the middle. Not like broken drywall, like flesh. The crack glowed from within, showing glimpses of the same otherworldly versions of the pawn shop. Faces peered out, pale and waiting. A whisper filled my head. "Lock it, John." I didn't think. I walked forward, jammed the key into the glowing seam, and turned. The walls screamed like bending metal. The light snapped shut. The mirrors all shattered at once. Then silence. When I came to, it was daylight. Real daylight. The shop looked normal again. Well, as normal as it ever had. Broken glass everywhere. Shelves dusty but still standing. The bayonet was gone for good this time. So were the rules taped to the counter. All except one. A fresh sheet of paper. Still warm. Still smelling faintly of burnt edges. Rule 8. If you close the door, don't open it again. I locked up, stepped outside, and the bell chimed like it was relieved. The gold tooth was gone from under the glass, but in its place on the counter, something small and shining caught the light. A molar, capped in gold, winking. I smiled at it through the window. "Sorry, Chief," I said softly. "Store's closed." The reflection in the glass smiled back a half second late, and kept smiling after I walked away.